Great, welcome. Welcome everybody. Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. It is Thursday, the 22nd of January, 2026. And today we are pivoting to some of the bills that are on our wall that we would like to address. And we are going to begin by addressing a labor bill introduced by our own Senator Perchlik, which we welcome to the table. Come join us. We're going to begin with looking at SB 230 and activating the flexible working arrangements. And Andy's going to introduce it and give us reason for why we're doing this. And then we're going to ask Sophie to walk through the bill with us. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Andrew Perchlik, Washington District. This is a bill that came out of the governor's return to office executive order or requirement. And we had several employees that, I don't know if you heard in your districts as much as I did here, since there's so many states.
Yeah, you represent the vast majority of the.
We had a lot of people that were hired under a verbal agreement that they could work one day a week in the office or no days in the week in the office. And then that changed on them. They asked for an exception to the rule, and then a lot of them just hadn't heard back, so they were worried about what was happening. And so I, talking to these constituents, fellow state employees, and what we could do, talk to the union. They pointed out that we have the statutory language about flexible work arrangements where it says they will consider it, and that we could make a change by just switching it from a may to a shall. That if the flexible work arrangement doesn't upset I think of the wording of the statute is the business operations, but just think of it as like if they can do their job under this flexible work arrangement, which doesn't have to be home, it could be showing up to work later so they can drop off their kids, or leaving early so they could pick their parents up from adult daycare, or whatever it is. If they can do that and still doesn't affect their work, or doesn't affect the mission of the place that they're working, that should be given, that they shall do it if they can meet that test.
Who has the authority? Who in this bill then has the authority to okay that? The supervisor, the manager, the head of the department?
Well, right now it's the governor, the agency of administration has said that they want to review all the flexible work arrangements.
In your bill, what do you have?
The bill, it's just the changes the may to the shall. Like if it's determined to not, if they're determined to be able to do the flexible work without affecting their work, basically, to put it in layman's terms, then they shall be allowed to do that. Which I admit, I don't know a lot about labor law. I didn't look at all the different consequences throughout all different places of work that I might have. This was just to address these issues that I was hearing from my constituents. So there might be other things, and I didn't talk to the Ledge Council all that much about it. I was made aware of the statute where it's a may, and I didn't have a back and forth with Ledge Council about other ways of doing it. It was like, here's the proposal.
Right.
I'm really glad you introduced this. I have a lot of constituents that commute up Chittenden County, and they just saw this as using a sledgehammer when we could have used a scalpel. There are many positions that you just don't need to go into the office, so it's worth looking at. I had the same question because I'm reading the language, and the real change is this: the employer shall consider the employee's request for a flexible working arrangement, and rather than may, shall grant the request in the event the request is not inconsistent with its business operations or legal contractual obligations. I think the employer in your language still ultimately determines that. So it defaults to it. I guess somebody could take legal action saying that the governor or the employer in this case incorrectly deemed it to be inconsistent, but it's not changing the authority over who would determine this, right?
Yeah.
It's just defaulting to
it gives the employee a little stronger case if they wanted to push it.
Right.
If they were said, no, we're still not going to allow you. You have to show up at 7:30. You can't show up at 9. Or share a work arrangement, whatever they have figured it out. They could take that to the court and say, no, the law says this.
Well, I think it's important to understand who the employer is in this situation, because who can give permission? I mean, is it supervisor? Is it like, yeah, so to me, that's the one thing that's a little unclear, because that's always the challenge with sweeping, mandates, is that it doesn't necessarily understand or appreciate the particular.
Yeah.
And the particular is only known by that supervisor or by that commission, you know, that direct manager, whoever's managing that employee.
And I did get an email once the bill was introduced from the school district that was concerned about it. They didn't say specifically, but, you know, I can't imagine the teacher saying, well, I'm just gonna teach it from home and on video, and that should be good.
So is this for all state employees,
It's for
including
all
education?
employers, so that's the kind of broad,
Public and private.
yeah, public and private, all employers would now fall under this, as they do now under the May.
But the governor's EO is just for state employees.
Yes, so that's the impetus of the introduction, but this would change the statute that applies to all employers, which is just.
Has a bigger impact, okay.
Yeah, so I'm definitely open to that conversation. Maybe there aren't places where it makes sense, but I think as Senator Chittenden said, the employer still has the ability to say, no, this would affect our business operations. We're not gonna allow it.
No, nobody has to do this, right?
But what's the process? Once the employer says no because of whatever my interpretation of that, this is, I'm assuming that the employee would still have the right then to go to court saying the employer's wrong, and the question would be, how much litigation would something like this spur, and what would the cost of that be?
Yeah, I think that's a good question for legislative counsel. I don't know, but I'm guessing you're right, that's what could happen, which I assume some employers would want to avoid.
That's happening now, right? I mean, didn't that happen last fall where people were filing court actions to try to overrule the governor's decision? I thought the VSCA.
Yeah.
We always
But that was
find it
just for
another
state
one more thing to do to deal with appeals.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
yeah,
That's great. More to follow. And we're gonna then have Sophie walk us through.
okay,
It's a simple change with with possibly big implications.
yeah. And I have another bill on your wall that at some point.
We love
I'd like
that
to
bill.
talk to you about, 270.
And we are going to look at it. I've incorporated it into our committee housing bill because it's
Yeah.
it could stand on its own, but we also might consider it in the package of
That'd be
housing
great, okay.
changes.
Do you guys put that Holden's down there?
Yeah,
Do you want to just quickly have our heads go to EV charging, or do you want to wait and introduce it when we chat about it?
what's up to the chairs?
How long do you want to be absent from Senate Transportation?
I'll just tell you what it is.
Just tell us quickly.
And this is another constituent that has an electric vehicle, lives in a condo association, doesn't have a garage, but has their own driveway parking spot. Their condo association said they couldn't charge their vehicle in their driveway. They said, at first they said it was charging a vehicle, maintaining your vehicle, and the bylaws of that condo association said you couldn't use your driveway to maintain your vehicle, like change your oil, I think. She successfully argued that it wasn't maintaining a vehicle. She had to hire a lawyer, the condo association, I don't think they went to court, but hired a lawyer to make the case. And then they changed the bylaws just to specifically disallow charging your vehicle in your own driveway, on your own cost, your own charging station. So I thought that people should be allowed in homeowner associations or condo associations if they want to pay for the installer. So this is different than the right to charge for a couple of years ago that kind of had an impact on all landlords. This is just if you own the unit.
If you own the unit, you have the right to put up an EV charger.
If you're gonna pay for it, they can't say it's unaesthetic to have Ford hooked to your car, which is basically my understanding of their argument.
Right.
So that's
So that's coming down the pipe. I've just incorporated it into our, given the time pressure on this committee stuff,
yeah.
I've incorporated it into our committee housing bill, but
Because we have a whole HOA section.
Right, yeah, great.
So,
Might as well.
chargers are 220.
Yeah.
Would the owner of the vehicle be responsible for upping the amperage and what have you?
Everything, and they have to do it by code and get a license.
It's not just mounting the box. It's-
Right, yeah, because they own the unit, so anything they would do in there, they would, just like any other changes. I think it's just like, as you might know, some homeowner associations like dictate with the color of your door and the color of your everything, or they own the outside of the building, so as long as they're not, they can have restrictions as they do now, they just can't have a restriction that says you can't have one. But they could say,
What color?
they can,
Yeah, maybe they could say,
Ask
that-
for it to be thoughtfully located.
yeah, thoughtfully located or aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you, Andy Perchlik.
Yeah.
Wonderful to have you
Thank
on loan from Senate Transportation.
Yes, I will go back. You're in good hands with the council.
Oh, we were in good hands. Thank you. Sophie, welcome.
Good morning. Sophie Zadatny for the Office of Legislative Counsel. Would you like me to put the bill up on the screen? I don't know what's your preference. It's a short one. I think you have copies.
We have a copy. Why don't we just walk through it? And it's on our webpage. So for people who are watching on YouTube, you can access it on our webpage. It's S230.
Yeah, so the flexible working arrangements bill was passed in 2013, went into effect in January of 2014. There haven't been any changes to the bill since it was passed, and I couldn't find any case law discussing it. So I don't think it has generated a lot of litigation that's made it through the
Sorry, so it was passed in 2013.
2013, went into effect January 1, 2014. So under the bill, it is essentially, it was based on sort of European flexible work policies and the belief that if you had flexible work policies, this would be more family friendly, it would reduce absenteeism, reduce turnover and lead to higher productivity. And that was part of what was in the legislative intent when the bill was passed. So it provides that an employee can request a flexible work arrangement from the employer. And again, it's just the employer. So covers all employers, private, public, whatever size here in Vermont, twice a year. And then it defines in subsection A2 at the bottom of page 1 what a flexible working arrangement means. So this isn't a short term, you know, I just need some flexibility in the next couple of weeks. This is more, I need to be able to come into work an hour later than everyone else and I'll stay an hour later. Or, you know, I'm going to work 3 days a week at home and 2 days a week in the office, whatever. It's those more substantive changes in the regular work arrangements. And the way it's written now, which you've already touched on, is essentially it's a discretionary, you know, the employer has to, you know, the employee can ask twice a year, so the employer has to, in good faith, consider the request. But the current language is that the employer makes the determination whether to grant the request, as long as it's not inconsistent with its business operations, its legal or contractual obligations. So what this is proposing to do is changing that sort of discretionary piece to require or say the employer shall grant the request in the event the request is not inconsistent with its business operations or its legal or contractual obligations. And then it has a list of examples of what inconsistent with business operations would mean. So if it's really going to detrimentally impact the business operations of the employer can say, no, this is, you know, it's just not going to work. And again, if you had a school teacher who said, actually, I'd prefer to work at home from my kitchen, like, no, that's not really going to work for the kids. You really need to come in. But if it's something that, you know, I've been working from home successfully, you know, 3 days a week, there's nothing that requires me to be in the office, that's, you know, that's a different situation. So that's what the change is. There was some reference in the prior conversation around, you know, going to court and litigation. So the way the act works, and you don't have all of it here, it's not a terribly long act, but it just has, this just has the sort of first half of the act in it. But there's no private cause of action for violations of this statute. So if somebody, you feel that you've been retaliated against because you've asked for a work arrangement, or, you know, for some other reason you're aggrieved by what you perceive to be the failure of the employer to follow this statute, you would file a complaint with the Attorney General, with the Human Rights Commission if you're a state employee, with a state's attorney, and then it would go through an investigation process. They would determine whether or not there's grounds to move it forward. So there's no private right of action in the current law.
Okay.
I think you said in the beginning, this could be public or private.
Yes, this is all employers.
Okay. I raised that because a lot of the language about like consumer demand and business performance feels more private sector. I could imagine this could be raised with the return to office order at the state level.
That's why Andy introduced it.
Oh, okay, sorry, I
And
missed that.
so, yeah, Andy.
So in that vein, I wonder if, I mean, I see no problem, looking at advancing this. We might want to look at the section on what's inconsistent with business operations to make it more applicable to the public and private sector.
And updated it, this was 15 years,
2013.
yeah, 15 years ago.
You mentioned there's no private right of action, but certainly an individual can make a complaint to one of several sources. And then depending upon what those sources do with the complaint, let's say you send it to one of those sources and they dismiss it. Doesn't the employee at that point have some right to appeal that?
You can appeal it, but it would go through the Attorney General, the State's Attorney, or the Human Rights Commission. And then an investigation is not necessary. And the Civil Division of the Superior Court can award injunctive relief and court costs, but I believe you have to go through one of those agencies.
Yeah, so you start with one of those agencies, but if that agency denies you or says that you don't have a valid complaint or it doesn't meet the requirements of the statute in terms of one of the exceptions, and then the individual disagrees with the agency's judgment, doesn't that person at that point have a right to get a lawyer and appeal to one of several places?
I'm not aware of that. I mean, I can double check and see again. There haven't been any cases there are no reported
This would seem
cases
to
on
be
it.
a magnet for cases, as I read this.
It hasn't been, it's been in law for a long
I
time.
mean, the most likely thing would be a retaliation one, like you've come forward and asked and the employer said no, and then you've had an adverse employment action. So that would typically, I would imagine, is how these cases would come up, would be more a retaliation.
Have this situation in any other states that you're aware of?
No, what I know is from the legislative history, there was reference to European policies and naming certain countries like the UK, Germany, and places.
Well, I'd be curious as to whether or not there are any other states in the United States that have something like this in place that we could look at, and in particular, what the effect of litigation has been elsewhere.
And I can certainly check to see if that's.
And after Sophie is done walking, we do have an expert in a particular area of this, sitting right behind you, Carrie Brown, our director of the executive director of the Women's Commission, who I believe has some input on this and may want to contribute. May want to contribute, it's a may, not a shall. So, this would, apply, so I'm just thinking about the executive order, which, I mean, it's a challenge. And the other area I think that we do need to explore is who the employer is, particularly in a big operation like this, like state government. Is it the direct supervisor? Is it the commissioner? Is it the person who knows the details of a person's work schedule so that they are actually the thoughtful one to be able to weigh in or not on this? So I think that.
I think it would, I mean, the employer is just the employer, so you would raise it, you'd go up through the chain, right? You would make a request, and it might end up in, your HR department. I mean, again, it depends on the size of the business. I would assume right now, if you're dealing with state government, those will be looked at by the Department of Human Resources, right? And then, again, it's an individualized determination. So on the one hand, what's the impact on the business operations of the employer? On the other hand, sort of what's the justification? What is it that the employee needs?
Well, I would be curious, I don't know if government operations is taking up what happened just now with the RTO.
Not yet.
But, I'm sure there are some departments that it worked very differently, and let's just say that other departments, some probably had a lot of waivers, some have satellite offices. I'm just saying that because I think somebody should be looking, if we're going to keep working on this, I always say it's incumbent upon us to be the model.
I agree.
And I don't know that we have been, I don't know what's happened in each department and each.
So at the moment, SGO hasn't taken this up, and I will clarify. I don't think we have anything on the wall about it.
It's a labor matter anyway.
It's a labor matter, so it belongs here. I think the challenge, I mean, and the state government is facing this, as we all have anecdotal evidence of, real experts in areas, in departments, in agencies who have been granted over the 5 years, particularly over COVID, the opportunity to be able to not live here and still work full time. And it's very interesting to watch who's getting those waivers and who isn't. It's just curious. There are a number of people who are being given permission to work through June, and they're going to be reviewed in June. Andy has had a coworker who has had challenges of not being able to satisfy the new return to work order, and a real expert in an area that is going to be a big loss for their department. We have multiple examples of that, and so I think in all things we need to learn to be flexible, and particularly if we want to keep expertise working in state government as we do. So I think this bill is worth our taking some time on, and we can have that committee discussion. But is there anything else, Sophie, you want to add?
No, and I can certainly look into what other states do. I mean, again, just to be clear, there is a separation here, so I understand from Senator Budget why he was motivated to bring this, but this is not limited to, and it's not a state government provision.
Right, and
actually provision. It's a
That's certainly one. I mean, if we take it up, we have all those choices in terms of the direction we want to go. So thank you very much. And we have some experts in the room, particularly I look at Harry. And if you'd like to just join us and talk about the importance of this bill and how it's been important and who it's been important to.
Sure, Carrie Brown, Executive Director of.
You're welcome to come join us.
Well, I would love an opportunity to really give testimony on this and talk about it, because there are a lot of aspects that you touched on, all of them in some way here. And this bill has been around since 2013, and this is one of the first bills I worked on in this job. And so it's very interesting to see what has come of it or not come of it. And it's long overdue for updating in some way. And then tied in with what's been going on with state employees, the Commission on Women has been it's been really trying to raise issues of equity, particularly as it concerns women and the whole return to office order thing. And we're very interested in looking at who is being impacted in what ways, who's leaving, all that. So it's a bigger issue, and I would love the chance to come in and really.
And we would love to have you come in and testify, because you will bring the data that you always bring on this, and particularly as it impacts.
As we can, yeah.
If you have it available. And the impact since 13, because you were key to this being passed. And we did it, I remember the Women's Caucus taking this on.
Yeah. It was part of a whole larger equal pay bill.
It was a big equal pay bill. So, we would love to book you when we take this up again, which I think I have this feeling around the room that we will be wanting to do. And if you would come back to us with as much data to that would support our decision making, that would be great. Anything else for Carrie? Anything else?
Well, there's just so much new data now that there's so many employers doing a return to office. There's so much new data about how it's affecting women.
Oh, huge.
I think that's one of the data pieces that is important also.
Yeah.
To the extent that you can, is how many men versus women are in the categories that
I think it's like 3 to 1.
It's huge.
Yeah. I'll do my best to get as much of that as I can.
That would be great.
Cited it in my article too.
Oh, right.
Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Terrific. Thanks very much. Anyone else? We have 5 more minutes. Anybody else who would like to testify? Hi. I see. Anybody else who'd like to testify briefly on this? Encourage us to take it up or not take it up? JP, labor persons.
I don't have anything to add, but 2 years ago, from my PFL today, I would welcome more investigation into this issue, particularly the data that.
And the person sitting next to you is whom?
Sophia McGinnon, Chamber of Commerce, just.
You're working with Sarah, okay, so you're taking notes, great. Hank?
Hank Feeling, based on public relations.
Who? Hank?
We work for the Medical Society and
Okay.
What's it called? Maidstone?
Oh, Bridget.
Oh, that's wrong. Maidstone.
Jill.
Oh, okay.
Right, right. Keep forgetting.
We've been here too long. Names keep changing.
Right. Okay, thank thank you, everybody. I think, okay to move, keep that in our hopper and take it up again at some point soon. Ready? Yeah, great. I think, so let me just explain what's happening, because we've had a big shift in our schedule today. We had, as you previously know, we had, asked the director of CTE, Career and Technical Education, workforce, we were gonna pivot to workforce this morning. Well, we still are, but differently. At the very last minute, late last night, we had a request from the Agency of Education to not have her alone, but with the secretary, and the secretary was already booked, so they canceled a whole hour of our morning. So it turns out, I found out that CTE is, the new rollout is actually being presented at the same time in House Commerce and Education. So at 10 o'clock, we are going to join via Zoom. We're all going to be on, all the committees are on Zoom, to hear the rollout of the new proposal from the agency. I would remind us all that we have a bill from Keisha that also addresses updating the career and technical education system. I think it's fair to say system. Yes? Yeah, her career and technical education.
Yeah.
And that we will be looking at that, not today as we'd hoped, but very soon. I know David and Keisha have both heard this already, and I apologize for that. And so if you have other things that you need to be doing, but we'd love to have you obviously here, but if you feel it's too redundant, we appreciate that. I do need Tom and Randy, though, for us to get going. So I think it's important for us to hear what the agency's plan is. It's ready to roll and they're doing it. And so we pivoted flexible. Speaking of flexible, here is a flexible working memory. So we are going to I think we're going to give you the break that you were going to have later and take it now. And then if you could be here at 10 o'clock, we're going to start at 10 and we'll join by Zoom. Does that serve everybody? At the last minute, I apologize, but you know, you have to be nimble here.
Is it okay if I take this from home on Zoom?
Absolutely.
Oh.
This is your,
Flexibility.
that's flexible.
Like, I'm gonna tell Seth.